to the favorites, the podcast presented by Bet365. We are part of the Volume Podcast Network. I am Chad Millman of the Action Network. I'm live from my Tommy John home studio, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my companion, my compadre, my BFF professional bettor, Simon Hunter. Hello, Simon.
Chad, our first show of the off season.
First show of the offseason. But you know what? It's a special episode. I know you love gambling stories. You know I love gambling stories. It's how I got into this, was just hearing good stories about people who gamble, people who take risk, the language of betting, all of that, the romance of it all is fascinating to me. So today we're going to be joined by producer Matt Mitchell, who we love to have on the show. He's a high quality ad, as they say. He's also excited for this one. He's taking us through a list of great moments in historical gambling history, I guess. A collection of very special stories that he's curated just for you, for me, our audience, who he believes are also going to love these old school gambling stories. Man, I feel like I've been dreaming about this. This is tailor made for you.
Yes, I'm very excited to present two special great moments in American gambling history to you guys and to our audience. And this is a very, obviously, unusual episode. Typically, we take some time off after the season, but I want to make sure that we, continue to deliver episodes for our audience. That if you're on a treadmill, or you're commuting to work, or you're in the subway, or you're holding hands with your mom, bouncing on a trampoline, whatever it is that you do when you listen to this show every week, you still have something to join you in the timeless and evocative medium of audio, Chad. So,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
this is
it
like
should be fun.
this is going to be the Matt Mitchell episode, but I feel like this is a combination of like how I built this and Drunk History. Remember the show Drunk History?
Yes, this is very similar to that, except
I
sober. Yes.
I loved that show. It was one of my favorites. We actually did this when we first started Action. I remember I wanted to do shows that were like drunk history for gambling. Do you remember this, Matt? And we
I,
did
I do.
like, Terry Glenn catching that pass from Drew Bledsoe to beat the Buffalo Bills. And we did, it was basically a drunk history bad beats.
Yep.
And it was super fun. Really, really fun. So I'm excited to do this today. And I'm glad you had this idea. I always like getting Matt Mitchell. The more Matt Mitchell on the show, the better. As a reminder, the Favorites podcast is presented by Bet365, and now new Bet365 customers get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. Sign up using promo code Favorites, deposit $10, place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. Those bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, restrictions apply. Before we get into the storytelling, we are having, I mentioned this on Tuesday, we're having another live event. This is going to be March 29th. Joe's on Weed in Chicago. That's the name of the street. Weed, Joe's on Weed in Chicago, my hometown. We did Simon's hometown in December in Philly. We're doing Chicago in March. Matt Mitchell, am I throwing to you? Are you going to give more details here? Is that the idea?
Guys, I am unbelievably excited about this live event. I was hoping we could do it in Chicago. We were able to convince them of that. I was hoping we'd do it at Joe's Bar on Weed Street, commonly and affectionately known as Joe's on Weed. We got that. I was hoping it would be 3/29, March 29th, the evening of the Elite Eight. We got that. And I was really hoping we'd get that big private concert space that they have at Joe's. The last time I was there, it was when Ronda Rousey got her ass beat by Holly Holm. I got to watch it in that room. So I think we'll have an absolute blast. RSVP site is not quite ready, but please save the date. It will be March 29th, Joe's on Weed, Chicago, Illinois, for the exciting launch of Bet365 in Illinois. And we will be probably like 4:30. Then we'll do a live show. Then the first game will tip. We'll all hang out, watch the game, sweat it along, and then we'll all stick around for that second game at Joe's afterwards. So mark your calendars, March 29th.
And we're going to have some special college basketball guests, right? Is that the plan?
Absolutely. We will almost certainly be joined by Stuckey and some others from the Action universe. It'll be a great time. Whether or not you care about the Elite Eight, just come because it's going to be an absolute riot.
Yeah, these things are awesome because we usually have free drinks and it's a Saturday night in Chicago at the end of March when weather is starting to turn into good stuff, almost in the window where it's the best time to live in Chicago. I say that as a Chicagoan, someone who loves the city desperately. The real question is going to be how many of my family members can I get to acknowledge I have a podcast and actually come out for the show? Will my near 80-year-old dad make it, who still acts like he's near 40? Will my 85-year-old stepmom come? I mean, these are the things that people have to look forward to. So save the date, March 29th. Matt, you kind of snuck this one in on us because I just realized you're basically doing your life's goal here, which is co-opting the show completely. So I will do my best hosting here and just pass the baton to you. Can you please tell us what happened to Captain Patton and Mary Ann Patton?
All right. So this first story is the story of an American clipper ship called the Neptune's Car in the year 1853.
Boy,
Yep.
I'm pretty sure every listener just completely is so excited. They definitely did not fast forward till we get to the ad reads.
Thank you, Chad. Your excitement is palpable. So one of the hardest parts about doing kind of stories like this is for the listener, what are you supposed to be picturing? So I'm going to do you a favor here. I'm going to kind of instruct you on what you should be visualizing, okay? Because it's a long time ago. All right, so for listeners at home, for Neptune's Car, you just picture a big ass wooden sailing ship. It's brand new. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful old ship.
Simon, are you picturing?
Got it? Can you picture a beautiful old wooden ship with sails and the whole thing? When you picture who owns the ship, the financiers kind of behind the ship, what the ship represents, I want you to just picture the owners and operators of the Cleveland Browns, okay? We'll use the Browns as our extended metaphor for the leadership and financial stake of Neptune's Car, okay?
I thought for sure you were going to say me.
No, you'll see why at the end. So it's basically the Cleveland Browns go to sea. All right, so this ship, Neptune's Car, takes her maiden voyage from New York City in 1853, and it's a total disaster. The captain worked the crew so hard that there's a mutiny, and he threatened to kill all of them. And by the time they get back to New York, everything's a total mess, Cleveland Browns style. So for the next voyage, these 1850s Browns, they need a new captain, okay? So on about 12 hours notice, they land on a guy named Captain Joshua Patton. And Captain Patton had just married his wife, Mary Ann, who was just shy of her 16th birthday, as was the style at the time. So we've got Captain Patton, and we got his wife, his teen bride, Mary Ann. For this first trip on Neptune's Car, Mary Ann insists on joining her husband, Captain Patton, which was extremely unusual. But her father was a sea captain. She loved the sea. Her husband's like, sounds great. Why not? So they set sail around the world.
What could go wrong with my 16-year-old bride on a round the world voyage and a sea full of crewmen?
That's right. It's going to go great. And indeed it does. The entire voyage, Mary Ann, who again is not an official member of the Browns for the purposes of this metaphor, She's teaching herself navigation. She's showing herself how to use charts. She's learning medicine. She's just being a real kind of young go-getter here. And they go from New York around the bottom of South America. Remember, there's no Panama Canal yet. That's like 75 years away. So you got to go the long way around South America. They go to San Francisco. They go to China. Then they go to London. They go back to New York. Game balls all around. Huge success. Wow. Incredible job, Captain Patton. Maybe this ship isn't cursed after all. Here is where the gambling comes in. When it's time for the next trip from New York to San Francisco, the Cleveland Browns ownership here, they discover that there are 3 other ships making this journey at about the same time. So in addition to all the money they have tied up in this operation, they make a very large wager with those other boats to see who's going to get to San Francisco first. That's obviously a proud and time-honored tradition of rich pricks betting against other rich pricks based on people they employ. You know all about this, Chad. So normally, the departure date for a trip like this would have a little bit of flexibility, but because there's now a big-ass bet on who gets there first, the Browns here, they need Neptune's car to get the hell out of here right away. But as Captain Patton is preparing the ship, for voyage number 2 here, he runs into 3 problems. So problem number 1, first mate breaks his leg. So you got to replace the first mate. And sometimes...
How did he break his leg? Do we know?
I'm getting to the ship-ready ship stuff. Chad, I'm a man of the land. I'm not a man of the sea. But we all know what a broken leg is.
I just want you to know I'm going to have questions.
That's great. And I'm happy to answer all of your questions, just like in real life, as patiently and as calmly as I answer the questions of my own children. So you need a new first mate. And sometimes, if it's a close call, you can just elevate the second mate. Like when Cleveland started Bailey Zappi instead of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And it's like, who fucking cares? But as it turns out, it is crucial that a first mate be able to read stuff. And the second mate, in this case, he couldn't read for shit. So it was more like, when Kyle Allen was backing up Josh Allen. Like, it's totally different classes here, so it won't work. But the Browns say, hey, no problem. And they go out and they just grab the first literate sailor they can find, a guy named William Keeler. And they say, hey, Captain Patton, we found your first mate. He can read and everything. So as far as they were concerned, problem number 1 is now solved.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Simon can back me up on this. Speaking of betting on, employees, we had a bet on who would be the first person to ultimately take down this show. I put my money on you. Simon put it on Gifford, and I feel like, Simon, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm going to win this bet. You want to weigh in on that?
I would have bet on Matt as well. I can't believe you said I'd bet on Gifford. No, it's got to be Matt Mitchell. Have you seen this man's social media presence? Oh my God. Every time he tweets, I'm like, oh my God, is this the one?
All right, Matt, keep going.
All right. So they grab this literate sailor. They find a replacement for the first mate. But Captain Patton's, he's feeling pretty sick. He should probably rest for a day or 2. And his third problem is Marianne, his wife, who's now 19, she's pregnant. So we got an emergency fill-in, first mate. Captain Patton's not feeling so great. His wife, she's pregnant.
This, by the way, not to interrupt you again, this has the classic makings of How to Handicap, right? Because everyone would have thought, oh my God, they did so well on the first one. They're amazing. We got to bet on them in the second one. No one's accounting for aggression, but also you really got to be inside Neptune's car to understand, like, the center. You got to go to a backup center because the first center is struggling and he's injured. So now you're bringing in a backup, and people are like, oh, it doesn't really matter. The first mate, it's not the most important person, but it turns out first mate, like a center, incredibly important, right? So now you're at the third string center, and that's terrible for the cohesiveness of the offensive line. And you don't know that your quarterback is sick. Like, that's not something that shows up on the injury report for these teams and these boats. So now all of a sudden we got a lot of circumstances that, if you're handicapping this, it's starting to look pretty bad for Neptune's car.
Yeah.
Which started as a favorite.
two classic issues that we run into all the time are about to rear their ugly heads, Chad. Volatility and cluster injuries. So here we go. All right, so we got these three problems, but the Browns, as usual, have the perfect solution. They say, rub some fucking dirt on it. It's time for kickoff. And these sons of bitches set sail for San Francisco on time. And again, no Panama Canal, so it's 30,000 nautical miles away around the bottom of the earth back to San Francisco. Away they go. And immediately, this trip is a total fucking nightmare because one of the first jobs of a first mate, in this case, this villain, William Keeler, you have to navigate when the captain goes to sleep. But every time he takes over, he keeps fucking it up and he puts him off course. And he's finally so insubordinate that Captain Patton just goes, you know what? And he just chains him up in his room. He goes, you are totally useless. And you keep fucking up. I'm just going to lock you away. And the second mate and third mate are totally hapless. They can't really do anything. It's truly a Cleveland Browns quarterback room situation. You know, it's a bust and two losers. So now Captain Patton's like, all right, great. I guess I can't go to sleep. He just stays up nonstop using his wife to help navigate. And it's freezing cold. And they make it to the tip of South Africa, right by Antarctica. And he's been awake for 8 days straight now. And he just collapses. So he's out of commission. The Browns are so inept, they essentially almost kill their coach. So Captain Patton has caught pneumonia, but as I mentioned, he was already feeling pretty sick before they left. And that's because he has tuberculosis meningitis, which has now left him totally deaf and blind. He is totally cooked. So now Mary Patton, the pregnant 19-year-old wife, she takes control of the ship and the navigation, and she has to take care of her essentially comatose husband. And there are icebergs and storms and all sorts of shit because they're by, again, Antarctica, and they're only halfway there. They couldn't be further away from both their home base, home port, and their destination. And there's still a ton of pressure on them because there's a huge bet they have to win to beat these three other ships because they were making great time because their captain wasn't sleeping. So they get around the horn, and they start heading north. And immediately the first mate, this guy, William Keeler, he's locked up in his room and he's like, he hears that the captain is totally cooked. So he tries to stage a mutiny to get unlocked and take over. And it almost works. But the crew's like, you know what? This lady, Marianne, she's doing a good job. She can read stuff. She's not trying to cause a mutiny. I think it's going to be okay. So she thinks, great, I've won the starting job. It's going to be okay. And then out of nowhere, Captain Patton wakes up out of his coma, right? He's got his sight back, but it still seems like he's totally scrambled eggs because he benches her and orders William Patton unchained and he can take over in his absence. And Keeler immediately tells Marianne, hey, great, now you can go get locked in your quarters with the captain. You can go play nurse. I'm going to take over. Within 2 days, she's looking out the window and she's convinced Keeler's at it again. He doesn't know what he's doing. We're definitely going off course. He wouldn't let her, have access to any of the navigation stuff. And again, I'm a man of the land. I don't know like how one could make one's own compass, but she does. She figures it out and she proves it to the scrambled eggs captain. Hey, we're headed in the wrong direction. And so it works. He commands her back in charge. Marianne gets the starting job back in place. Keeler gets locked up again. And then Captain Patton slips back into a coma. He's deaf and blind. He's totally cooked for the duration. We won't hear from him again. But here's the best part. Are you ready? As it turns out, Mutiny Boy, William Keeler, the last-minute replacement, he wasn't simply an incompetent asshole. Chad and Simon, he was throwing the fight. He'd bet on the other ship. He was intentionally fucking with Neptune's car, his own vessel, because he was point shaving on the high seas.
That is crazy.
So now Marianne is incredibly pissed, just like my wife was the entire time she was 6 months pregnant, and they just start hauling ass north. She's totally exhausted. She ends up wearing the same clothes for 2 months straight. And when she finally steers them into San Francisco Bay, Mutiny Boy William Keeler gets a crewman to unchain him, and he slips out and he jumps overboard and swims away, never to be heard from again. And in the most Cleveland Browns ending of this entire thing, when they finally arrive in port, after surviving these unimaginable hardships, the terrible weather, the brutal conditions, the blind deaf captain, the nautical point shaving, they get off the ship and they go, hey, did we win? Did we beat the other 4 ships? They finished second. They finished second, Chad. Their owners lose their bet on a truly terrible beat. And lucky for them, lucky for the Browns, they get to refuse to pay Captain Patton the $5,000 they owe him because he was basically dead half the time. And they don't have to pay Mary Patton anything because she doesn't even work for him. So like I said, the perfect ending for a Cleveland Browns allegory. And that is the story of Neptune's car, Mary Ann Patton, the first woman to command an American ship and the hero of an epic historical bad beat.
I can't believe, and that it's a beautiful story and excellent work researching it. I know it was a labor of love for you. I'm just so disappointed that there were nefarious deeds taking place with related to gambling in the 18th century, 19th century,
The
when
mid
it
19th
came,
century, yeah.
yeah, when it came to ship captaining. Those people all seemed pretty much, and I say this pun intended, above board.
Wow, did you really laid that trap for yourself the whole time? When did you think of that?
Right after I said nefarious.
Incredible. Well done.
Thank you.
So to put a bow on this, what happens to them afterwards? Marianne and Captain Patton return to Boston finally. He's basically cooked. So they put him in an asylum. He dies shortly thereafter. She gives birth successfully. And then she also gets sick and dies 4 years later at the age of 24. And now the hospital at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in Kingsport, New York is named after her. And that's the end of that.
Wow. How did you find this story?
Chad, I was able to do exhaustive research. I've always got my ears to the gambling streets. It dates back, those ears stretch back hundreds of years, Chad. But one of the best sources for many gambling stories, which I absolutely love, which I will quote many times from, is Roll the Bones, The History of Gambling, an absolutely incredible book by David G. Schwartz. This is a totally unpaid plug. I've read this book 4 times. It's not a new book, but Roll the Bones, if you know someone that is literate, like a good first mate, and likes gambling, it's a great book. I highly recommend it.
Matt, I know David Schwartz. I know Roll the Bones because I've interviewed David Schwartz many, many times. He's a sort of gambling historian and professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
Oh, I've read the book, Chad. I'm glad that you two have such a cozy relationship.
That's wild. Well, listen, if you made it this far and you want to make extra money daily from your sports betting, Simon knows I'm always trying to find ways to take sports betting to the next level. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Edge Boost, the financial platform that pays you cash back to wager. Edge Boost is an online bank account that pays you for every deposit. With the Edge Boost Visa debit card, you receive up to 0.5% cash back on all your sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. That's free money back in your pocket for doing what you're already doing. It's a no-brainer. Plus, your Edge Boost debit card starts with the $250,000 daily limit and will never be declined for gambling activity. They've got built-in tools to help you stay responsible, and there are absolutely no hidden fees or minimum required balances. Stop leaving money on the table. Visit edgeboost.bet today to learn more and sign up. That's edgeboost.bet. Simon, we are left with no football for more than 6 months, but now we can focus on what really matters, our own personal comfort. That's right. After months of selflessly serving our audience with free betting picks and analysis week after week and month after month, it's time for us to look inward. And as we look inward, we must first look down at our incredibly comfortable Tommy John underwear, the cornerstone of our personal comfort, by providing us with the most comfortable underwear, shirts, and casual essentials. The grind of the NFL season never broke our joyful spirits, nor clouded our clear-eyed decision-making. If you enjoyed a wonderful NFL season It's time to relish the off-season. Do yourself and your loved ones a favor. Let the unrivaled comfort and flexibility of our beloved sponsor, Tommy John, into your life. Simon, why will you be wearing more Tommy John in 2025?
Because comfort is king.
Right now, you can shop TommyJohn.com/favorites and get 25% off your first order. Save 25% at TommyJohn.com/favorites. That's TommyJohn.com/favorites. All right, Matt, do we have your second story?
Yes, this is the story of Andrew Jackson, a brief glimpse into one of America's most maniac gambling presidents. So in this story, I'm going to be using some dollar figures, and instead of just saying a number like $1,500, I'm just going to say the amount of money in today's money so that we can just be kind of singing off the same sheet of music here. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, so in the early 1800s, America was rapidly expanding westward, and it was a time of a great excitement on the American frontier because I can't overstate how unbelievably boring life on the frontier really was. And I can totally see why if you're, just trying to chop a tree down or whatever, to skin a beaver, playing cards would be just about the most exciting thing in the whole world.
Matt, I feel like anybody listening to this podcast has a very clear idea of what that journey was like.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone here can really picture that. So I want to use gambling as a way in here. And while I'm delighted to dive into betting on the frontier more in the future, I want to use the fact that politicians of that era, especially frontier politicians, they loved to gamble. Many of them were incredibly skilled players. For example, Henry Clay of Kentucky, Daniel Webster of Massachusetts. These guys were real card sharks. But this story is going to focus on their great political adversary and one of America's all-time sons of bitches, Old Hickory himself, Andrew Jackson of Tennessee. Jackson loved the ponies because he was an incredibly skillful rider. And why was he skillful? Well, he was born in 1767 to Scots-Irish parents. And if you know anything about the Scots or the Irish, you know they hate the English. Isn't that right, Simon?
Facts.
When young Andrew Jackson was a kid, with a burning hatred for the English he'd received from his parents, he served as a messenger for the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War, and he was dope at it because it required a lot of bravery, but the kind of bravery where you don't consider kind of personal consequences, exactly like being a gambler. You also have to be a great rider. And Jackson was indeed a great rider. He ended up getting captured and imprisoned by the British at the age of 12. Truly ride or die, literally. And spoiler alert, America wins the Revolutionary War. And by the time Jackson was 38 years old, he was a major general in the Tennessee militia. He was a U.S. representative. He'd already gotten rich and then almost bankrupt and rich again and bankrupt again. But by the time Tennessee gained statehood, he was a pretty big deal. He already owned several racehorses. And one that he particularly loved was a horse called Indian Queen. And Jackson challenged his neighbor, a guy with the incredible name of Lazarus Cotton. And Lazarus Cotton owned Greyhound, the fastest horse in the South. And they had a big race with multiple heats. And Greyhound absolutely whips Indian Queen's ass. And Jackson is deeply embarrassed. So Jackson is determined to beat Greyhound. And he knows a horse that can do it. The horse is called Truxton. And that presents two problems. The first is obviously that he doesn't own Truxton. And the second problem is that Truxton had just raced Greyhound and had lost. But luckily, problem number two kind of solves problem number one, because the loss of Truxton to Greyhound had basically bankrupted his owner. So Andrew Jackson slides up and he offers this guy a hell of a deal. He says, listen, bro, if you let me borrow Truxton, I will pay off your debts. I'll get you out of your jam. And I'm going to train Truxton to run a big race. And if he wins that race next fall, I get to buy Truxton for 40 grand and I'll give you 5 other horses. And the guy says, all right, you son of a bitch, you got yourself a deal. So now Andrew Jackson has his dream horse, Truxton, and he reaches out to his neighbor, Lazarus Cotton, again, and he says, let's run it back, baby. Says, I just bought Truxton, the one your horse just beat. but there's a new trainer in town. That's me. So he, Jackson, and Cotton agree to a race, but Jackson says, this time I'm all in. And remember, he just paid off this guy's debts. He's a little strapped for cash. So, like, what is all in for a 38-year-old Andrew Jackson? What's that look like? Well, in like a cash and prizes sense, like in a Price is Right showcase showdown value, it was $140,000 today's money. 100,000 of that was in cash, and another 40,000 in Jackson's clothes, valued at another 40 grand.
Wow.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge win for Jackson, or it's going to be absolutely devastating.
Talk about a clothes horse.
Wow, is that real good boomer vernacular? Incredible.
Just doing what I can. Doing what I can to contribute here.
Absolutely huge wager. He's betting the clothes off his back. And back then, Chad, no odds. This is just straight up. He's just going to bet him 140 grand straight up. So now,
straight baller. Straight baller.
Now, it's set. Jackson has to start training Truxton, and he does so like an absolute savage. He tells people he's going to run the horse incredibly hard to instill a will to win in this animal, just like classic Maniac stuff. And everyone thinks, okay, Jackson's killing this horse. There's no way he's going to win this race. The horse already fucking lost to Greyhound already. So when race day comes, it's in Nashville, everybody rolls up. It's an unbelievably exciting enterprise here in an incredibly boring place, an incredibly boring part of American history. So this is the most exciting thing that's like ever happened. Every report from this race says that gambling there is absolutely out of control. There's a congressman in attendance who says multiple people are betting their entire properties, like 600 plus acre properties. People are going full Jackson. They're betting all their clothes. He watched a guy take off his riding gloves and just bet the guy next to him. Like everybody has got gambling fever for this giant race. Entire Upper South is there. Even the jockey that Jackson hires, he bets his entire net worth on himself. He even uses horses he doesn't even own to make more bets. And then finally, Chad, they're going to do the race. It's the 1805 version of Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. It's Truxton Greyhound 2. This one's for all the clothes. And Truxton absolutely crushes Greyhound. Huge win. Jackson wins a shitload of money. The old owner of Truxton, he gets his prize money. Both men are totally bailed out. The jockey doubles his net worth. He rolls out a barrel of cider and ginger cookies. It's an 1805 after party. Unbelievable. So we can all agree Andrew Jackson, just a total gambling maniac. And you could kind of picture the equivalent of a guy like this today. Fun little bonus nugget. 20 years after this race, Andrew Jackson runs for president. And he's running against John Quincy Adams. It's a classic matchup. You got a Southern maniac versus a pedigreed Northeastern fancy boy.
Patricia.
And Jackson yeah, you get it.
Yeah.
I wonder who you would be. And Jackson wins the popular vote, but it's too close to call. So the election goes to the House of Representatives, and John Quincy Adams takes the White House. Jackson's furious about it, and he blames his old adversary, the card shark, Henry Clay. He thinks they brokered some kind of crooked deal, stop the steal, all very familiar stuff to us. But during the election, Jackson had painted John Quincy Adams as this pansy boy, right? This pansy Puritan. But after entering the White House, John Quincy Adams is like, oh shit, I'm going to have to talk to like a lot of foreign dignitaries. I got to find something for them to do. They all love billiards. Europeans love playing pool. So Adams gets an old pool table and he has it refurbished and he buys the sticks and the balls and all that shit. Like some, Midwestern dad redoing his rec room, except it's the White House. When Andrew Jackson, who just lost the election to him, he hears about this. He's like, oh my God, yes, I'm going to fucking bury this guy for this. And he manufactures an entire scandal saying he can't believe the president would use tax money for, quote, gaming tables and gambling equipment. It says betting inside the White House would, quote, shock and alarm the religious and moral part of this country. And John Quincy Adams is like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? I bought the table with my own money and I'm not even using it to bet. It's just to like bullshit with ambassadors. And obviously, they call out that Jackson is a known enormous maniac gambler and loves betting on cards and horses and cockfights and anything else. And Jackson had challenged a dude to a duel over a canceled horse race. He got shot in the chest in that duel and still killed the other guy. Like, not a kind of guy you're going to take a lot of shit about gambling from. But it didn't matter. The scandal totally works. The next election is a rematch. Adams, Jackson, it's full of dirty tricks and all sorts of bullshit. But just like Truxton Greyhound 2, this one's for all the clothes. Jackson, as a maniac, beats Adams, wins the presidency. And to end the story, when Jackson goes to D.C., he immediately strong arms Congress. He makes them renovate the White House stables so he can bring all of his famous horses with him. And that is just a glimpse into the life of President Andrew Jackson, American gambling psychopath.
What do you think of that one, Simon?
Honestly, not shocking, because if you do go through American history, all these presidents have had pretty wild lives, right? And I didn't know all that about him in horse racing, though. I knew he was a gambler. I never knew it was all horse racing. So pretty cool story, honestly.
I gotta say, I like the second one better. The second one,
Felt a
I
little
had
cleaner.
I had no idea. Yeah, a little more connected to the gambling, but
Yeah.
I had no idea that he made that much money from betting horses and that he was that much of an accomplished rider. That's actually incredibly cool. Is that also from David Schwartz's book? You want to repeat where you got this stuff?
Roll the Bones, The History of Gambling, wonderful book by David Schwartz. Other sources include the Smithsonian, rejectedprincesses.com, Wikipedia, a host of other books. It's been a great time.
Surprised the Better Collective VPN let you get to rejectedprincesses.com.
Hey, fair is fair. You always credit your sources, Chad. I can't be some fly-by-night best-selling author like yourself. I can't just
No,
make
you
up
listen.
stories.
Nobody wants hat tips and credit sourcing more than I do. I think we all have to be diligent when it comes to that. Matt, I credit you for being the ultimate source for these incredible gambling stories. You know what? I say it every show. Feedback is a gift. I got to get feedback from people on what they thought of this episode and these stories, because I found them charming and fascinating. I have no idea if anyone else did, and I'm very curious to know if this is something people are going to want repeated. So by all means, you must send the feedback. Send it directly to Matt.
Yeah.
Podcasts, S at the end, podcasts at actionnetwork.com. That's awesome. As a reminder, the Favorites podcast is presented by Bet365, and now new Bet365 customers get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. Sign up using promo code Favorites, deposit $10, place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. Those bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Apply. Simon and I will return with our next episode of The Favorites on the Action Network YouTube page Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Download us from Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you get your pods. Rate, review, subscribe, leave us 5 stars. Say whatever you want. As I said, feedback is a gift. Until next time, love you.